Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the No Job Podcast. I'm Najee Simmons, your host. I'm so happy to have you here with our special guest, Jake Savage. And yes, that is his real name. He's the host of a podcast called Persuasion School, which he's going to talk a little bit about. But he's also somebody that I think can help not only inspire, but also inform you to give you the tools you need on the way to making a living doing something that is meaningful to you, because we believe that everybody has to have a living, everybody has to make a living, but nobody has to have a job. Here to help us on our journey to no job, I'd like to introduce to you the host of Persuasion School, Jake Savage. How's it going, man?
Good. Najee, appreciate it. Like I said, man, I'm happy to be here. Love the show so far, especially your tagline, join me on the path to joblessness. I smiled so big when I heard that this morning. I love that. So
Yeah,
glad to be here.
absolutely. Because for so many people, I mean, nothing would put a bigger smile on their face than to not to have to go to their job. And I didn't say not to have to go to work because I believe
Right.
humans can't thrive without work.
Hmm.
But there's no reason the work can't be something that means something to you as well as the people who are paying you to do it.
Yep.
And that's the space we try to operate in. But Jake, one obstacle to getting to that place is overcoming what might manifest as fear. I don't know what to call it all the time, but there's a lot of internal hurdles to even coming out to the public and saying you want to make a living doing things differently. And I'm hoping my viewers can borrow some courage from you, because I heard that as a door-to-door salesman, you've knocked on almost 100,000 doors. Is that true?
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
So
Yeah.
how did you get into that? How did you get the balls to go up to almost 100,000 people's doors, knock on them, and ask them to buy something from you? Because that's the kind of cojones we want.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I've got to say, I've been in sales now for 14 years.
Hmm.
And a lot of that has been just sort of building and working and learning what works, learning what doesn't work, adjusting on the fly, continuing to learn, study, and grow.
Hmm.
And I've put in a ton of effort for sure into getting to where I'm at today. But I have to say,
Hmm.
that's one of the times I've been lucky many times. And that's one of the times I was really, really lucky because I stumbled into door-to-door sales super early. I Man, so when I turned 14, I could not wait to work. I wanted to make my own money, do all my own things. My parents were stoked. And so I went and got this work permit at the city hall when I turned 14, got a job at this burger joint. And then I made friends with this other guy, Justin. And ties into the door-to-door story. But so I was there super early, made friends with Justin. And then maybe a year and a half goes by. Justin had left to go off to some other job. I run into him randomly one night at a Starbucks, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, I think you'd be really great at this new job I started. The reason why I left the burger joint, you should come check it out. It's actually door-to-door sales." And so I'm 15, about to be 16, barely just have a driver's license. And he was like, "Man, you can make a..." So I said, "All right, sign me up. Like, I'll show up to that place tomorrow." So the reason why I say I got lucky
Hmm.
was because that was a 100% commission job.
Right.
And living at home at age 15, I did not yet have bills to pay. When that afforded me the opportunity to go through a steep learning curve.
Sure.
I could spend days, weeks, or months even not getting a paycheck and just learning. And it'd be different now if I started that. So again, lucky that I stumbled into it so early.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was the beginning of a long journey for me. And of course, the first few doors I knocked on, I was so nervous. I was just shaking, dude. I could not even fathom the thought that I was like knocking on some stranger's door and going to try to pitch them on something and get them to say yes. Like, it was just wild. But it was also exhilarating.
Hmm.
And just like, going on a roller coaster or whatever, if you're a thrill seeker, I got that same sort of rush
Uh-huh.
from door-to-door sales. And so that kept me going, and eventually just got better and better and better and better over time, and kind of kept going.
Okay, awesome. So what were you selling in that situation, in that first job?
Yeah. So very early on there, we were selling home remodeling products. So windows, siding, roofing, doors, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would show up and I would set appointments essentially. So I would try to get a homeowner in the area
Yeah.
to agree to have somebody come. Yeah. And give an
Okay,
estimate for
I
windows.
got you. I understand. So, how long did you do that before you thought? Did you ever come to the point? Because I think if I was you, I would have gotten to a point where I thought, "Wow, if I can do this, well, man, maybe I can probably do anything I want to do if I can do this." Was that your mentality? What kind of confidence did it instill in you, if any?
Yeah, yeah, no, it definitely did. And that was something that it was like a resounding theme for me because not only were friends saying that, my friends' parents saying that, but people whose door I would knock on. I would knock on the door and then sell them or not sell them. Sometimes if they didn't buy from me, they would say the same thing. Hey, stick with it. You are going to go places. If you can just encounter this rejection and go through it, you're going to be able to do whatever you want someday. So yeah, that was starting to just be drilled into me at a super young age. And I think that played a big role.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that you listened because I think people disqualify themselves all the time, even when they get encouragement from people who see them doing their thing. And people will recognize when somebody has a gift, and they'll tell them, just like the people you sold told you, you should stick with this, you should keep going down this path. But I think so often we disqualify ourselves. We come up with one thing or another as a reason why we can't do it, even though we want to. So it's dope that you stayed the path and you didn't let anything discourage you.
Mm.
And one question I know you like to ask is, would you like to get more of what you want out of life every day? Obviously, the answer to that question for all of us is yes, but we don't quite know how to do it. Has
Yeah.
has thinking like that shaped the way you approach your life in general?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the circumstances, but I would say a lot of the things that I've acquired in life, whether relationships or money or opportunities or experiences, are because most of a lot of them happen for whatever reason, but a lot of them did happen just because I asked.
Hmm.
And I learned that from door to door. Like you're not gonna, we've all heard the whether it's Wayne Gretzky or Michael Jordan, we've all heard that quote. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and a lot of people are like, yeah, 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 cliche. But for me, it rings true as someone who knocked on doors for a living. Like if you do not knock, you do not get, and so it's definitely shaped my life today. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a statement of biblical proportions. If you do not
Oh,
knock,
100%.
you
Yeah.
do not get 100%. And I hope people hear that because they can take what you learned knocking on doors and apply it to whatever it is that they want to do, whatever they're trying to pursue. If you don't knock, if you don't give it a shot, it is not going to happen. There is only one way that it can happen, and that is if you get started. That's why I
Yeah.
began this thing to bring that message to this world that you have to
Mm.
try. Just this morning, I posted, wouldn't you rather try to do what you actually wanted to do in this life and fail than wonder what if? Because I failed before and I know I can live through failure.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I don't want to be old and be wondering what if. I'm not, that is not something I'm willing to let happen.
Yeah. I
But
agree.
um, so viewers at home, the reason Jake and I reconnected. So let me backtrack a little bit. I started following his Instagram page a year or two ago, and look, I have no idea how. I literally have no idea. I don't think I know anybody that knows you, Jake. I, I but you ended up on my radar somehow, and that's the first lesson, right? You never know whose radar you're on, right?
Yeah, that's
You
true.
never know.
Yeah.
So recently, you posted that your podcast, Persuasion School, which we're going to get into,
Mhm.
recently hit 1,000 or 1,500 downloads or streams in a 30-day period. That is amazing, man. Because I saw you before this podcast, before you were hitting these numbers. I've seen the organic growth. So I'd like you to talk a little bit first about Persuasion School, what it means, what it's about, and who it's for, and also talk a little bit about your growth journey. Did you ever expect it to get here, and now it looks like it's just trending up, up and beyond?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. And thank you. I mean, I'm just super grateful and humbled to see some traction occurring. Now, I'm not sure how far it's going to go. Obviously, I want to speak all those good things into existence and say I'm going to crush it. And I plan to, but you never know what life throws at you. And so right now, I'm grateful for the traction that I've gained so far. So Persuasion School is a podcast, like you said, that just teaches the masses how to get more of the things that they want and deserve in life. My goal through it is really to almost democratize persuasive communication. Like if anybody can be, I believe anybody can be empowered with these tools to enable them to navigate conversations confidently, navigate rejection confidently, and ultimately break through to the other side to get what it is they want. And so for me, it was just this idea of, I feel like I have been able to utilize these in my everyday life, not just sales, everything in life. I'm utilizing the sales principles that I've learned to help me get more of the things that I want. And I've got plenty of friends that have always come hit me up saying, "Hey, I want to ask my boss for a raise. Can you walk me through it?" And I would give them some tips. We'd write down a strategy. They'd come back saying, "I got the raise," or "Hey, I got the job. I got the promotion. Oh, that person I was interested in asking on a date, they said yes. Thanks for giving me those tips." And so I was just, that thought had kind of been instilled for a while. Like, man, these are principles for everyday life, not just for salespeople. I would love to one day spread the word. But how the podcast first got started was 2 years ago now, March 2019. And this is a great example for why you should just freaking go for it, because I had no clue what I was doing. And it was called something else. It was called Grow Savagely. Play on my last name, also tying into personal growth. But truly, the reason I chose Grow Savagely is because it was available on Instagram. Don't choose a name for your podcast or anything because it's the only handle available on Instagram. And so, anyways, I chose that. And like, people never quite got it because I'm like a sales guy and I'm interviewing other entrepreneurs about their journeys, but none of it really ties into like sales. And I would try to tie it into growth and growing savagely. And it was just, I think it was okay, but the message wasn't clear for people. And it was all, my main intent at that time was for it to all be video and YouTube. So I made 10 episodes, interviewed some cool people. The audio never gained traction. Video on YouTube, some, and not much. And I think it's because I hadn't really nailed the marketing down, like how to communicate a message clearly through branding and marketing materials. So anyways, COVID hits, and well, I'm really slow doing like one episode a month or less with the video, spending money, making mistakes. COVID hits. I can't interview anybody in person, which is what I'd like to do. Mm-hmm. So I'm on pause for a while. And then it just kind of hit me one day to, I don't know what it was actually. I would love to look back, but maybe I was listening to something and it just occurred to me like, oh yeah, that podcast, I just put it on hold because of COVID. Am I not going to pivot? Am I not going to adapt? Am I just going to let that thing, like, what am I going to tell people? They're like, what happened? Oh, I just like let it go to the wayside because I couldn't pivot or adapt and whatever. Like, I don't know. I just started thinking, what a terrible excuse to not continue this. What are some ways that I could keep the podcast going and maybe even make something more relevant to today? And so I think it was because people were hurting and struggling and I couldn't interview people in person. I said, all right, I'm going to do audio only. I'm going to try to crank out more episodes, shorter episodes, and have them mostly be focused on helping people that are going through these situations now. Like, how do you get jobs? Mm-hmm. Ask for jobs, ask for raises, ask for promotions, like get more of these things, especially during a super tough time. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of kept making these episodes and putting them out there, and nobody was listening. And I'd go back on and see like no listens, maybe 2 listens, 3 listens, 4. And I'd be stressed out. I'd still get stressed out doing it. But I heard some like Gary V quote, Gary Vee, everybody has opinions on this guy, right? And like there are some things he says that are just nuts, and there are some nuggets that he drops. But one of those nuggets was when he said if he could never tell how many people liked his content on Instagram, like if all of a sudden likes were gone and he didn't know if anyone was engaging with it, he would still create every single day and just put stuff out there
Mm-hmm.
because it's also helping him. And he's just trying to put these things out into the world. And I was thinking, okay, I'm getting like 0 listens per podcast episode,
Yeah.
but who am I doing it for and why am I doing it? Like I might as well just keep doing this every day because it's going to build discipline, and who knows, maybe one day it will catch on. So I think that was really helpful just to continue even when there were 0 listens, and then
Yeah.
eventually started to roll in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. That's tough. There's an entrepreneur I'm going to be interviewing in the coming weeks. Owns a business selling vegetable juices. Used to have a stand at the mall where some days he would only sell one juice. Couldn't
Hmm.
even pay his rent for his little kiosk at the mall during that time period with what he sold. And your situation reminded me of that. One listen, two listen, 0 listens. It takes some other kind of stuff to keep going when you see that. And I know you talked about it a little. You said you wanted to build discipline, and you asked yourself who you're doing it for. But if you can, narrow down in that what was it that allowed you to continue through the no listens, because everybody who goes out to do something is going to have a day or a week or a month with 0 sales, with 0 traction. They believe this is their god-given dream or vision. They believe they're supposed to be doing this, and nobody's responding. What do you find within yourself to keep going in that point?
It's a deep question.
Oh yeah.
uh,
And yeah,
no,
just
yeah,
comes to you.
yeah. I'm excited to try to tackle it here, but I think for one, I I've got faith, and I mean that in maybe that's multi-layered.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One, I was fortunate enough to have years of door-to-door sales experience to know that you could knock on door after door after door after door after door and get 0 sales, and all your friends and coworkers around you are getting sales, and then you start to doubt, start to have those negative thoughts, am I even good at this anymore? Is sales for me? Should I find a new career? Like I'm not getting anything. And then you just stick freaking with it, and eventually somebody says yes, and that's kind of all you need, that little snowball of confidence, and then that keeps rolling, and then you're kind of back on the horse. And so for me, like that would go through my mind when I wasn't getting many listens. And by the way, dude, I'm at 1,500 streams. It's not, it's not Joe Rogan status or like any of these like massive podcasts. So I want to make it clear, I still don't have it figured out. That's
Right.
for sure. I got to clarify
Yeah.
that. But I got to say, that having faith that ultimately it would work out was big. And then 2, trying to just listen to what other people say, like what you're doing through this podcast, man. Because I've read plenty of books by entrepreneurs and business people, listen to all the podcasts, almost all the How I Built This with all those entrepreneurs, and almost every single one of them talks about, crap hitting the fan, and they were thinking about quitting, and they were like taking out all these loans, and their family was stressed, and blah, 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 blah. And no matter what, they just stuck it out and good things happened. So it's almost like blind faith, like, okay, this is what these guys did.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing was going right. Nothing was working, and they stuck it out. Am I not going to stick it out?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I not willing to do that? And I
Mm-hmm.
just asked my question. I think I asked myself that question, like, am I not willing to do the same thing those other people did? And then I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, the answer is no, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So that
Like,
helps.
how can any of us expect to reap the kind of reward they do if we're not willing to sow like they did, to work like they did, and to work like they do? I think some of what you said boils down to seeing like stick to itiveness as a value, like making it a personal value. Like I, Jake Savage, I, Najee Simmons, stick to what I said I was going to do unless an act of God prevents me from doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
or I devise a better course, but I'm not going to stop doing it just because it doesn't seem to be working for an instant. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's tempting to imagine that everybody who is enjoying any kind of success on something at any level had a meteoric rise, and there was a the graph. It says entrepreneurship. People think it's like a straight slope going up, but it's really
Yeah.
zigzagging all over the place,
Right. Right.
up and down. I like to hear those zigzag up and down stories. And I like to talk to people at all points in their journey, because people who listen are all in different points of their journey. And I want to ask you about your area of expertise now, because, well, not everybody's going to be going door to door. Everybody is going to be selling on some level if he's going to work for him or herself. So,
Mhm.
what would you say are some key things that people don't know about persuading people to first listen to you and then to go with you, assuming they have a need for what you do and an interest? How do you get people over the hump? What are some of the barriers to connecting to a potential customer or client that you know how to overcome?
Hmm. Yeah. A lot of things going on there for
Mhm.
sure when it comes to persuading other individuals. And there's one thing that I'm happy to share, and it's typically a major mistake that a lot of people make when they are trying to get buy-in for an idea or influence other people to take action. So I'll share that, but I've got to first say that a couple things. One, the age old sort of adage that if you're going to sell something, you got to be bought in on it yourself. And I think that will come through when you are trying to pitch an idea. If you're not fully sold on it yourself, does not matter what you say, it will come out through your words somehow, or your tonality, or your body language. It will be made clear that you're not fully bought in. So whatever it is that you're trying to sell, whatever the idea is, you got to make sure you're 100% committed to it, because I think that's going to play a major role. Two is you need to focus on being somebody that people want to work with. So there are three pillars essentially for persuasion. Many of us probably took a rhetoric class, persuasive writing in high school or college. We probably heard about the three pillars of persuasion from Aristotle: logos, pathos, and ethos. So logic, emotion, and then ethos is the most important one, Aristotle said, when it comes to persuading others. And ethos is the character or credibility of the speaker. So if you're a person of strong character and integrity, that's going to lend you credibility and make it easier to secure buy-in from other people. If you're looking to make a quick buck or manipulate somebody or take advantage of somebody, maybe it works one or two times, but it's not a sustainable, operation for the
Unless
long
you're
run.
unless you're a sociopath.
Yeah, exactly. So I would really try to focus on, some of your values. What do
Mhm.
you stand for? And would you follow you? Would you do business with you? Would you say yes to you? And if you can't honestly answer those questions as yes just yet, then before you go around trying to persuade other people, figure out what it is that you need to work on,
Mhm.
for sure. So be sold on whatever it is yourself. Be somebody that people want to say yes to. Okay, and now three. Here's the biggest mistake that people make when trying to persuade others. This also comes down to getting a raise, asking for a raise or promotion, or if you're navigating a job interview. This
Mhm.
is applicable everywhere. And this mistake is that when people try to sell their ideas, they often position themselves as the hero in the story.
Oh,
Think about it from like a company perspective. If I'm a salesperson for a company, the mistake would be, hey, you've got this problem, this issue, it's been killing you, but hey, our company and me, we're swooping in with a cape on our backs, right, to come in and save the day. And it's the same thing when people ask for a raise or even ask someone to go out on a date with you. You might say to your boss, for example, hey, I've been here for the last 7 years. I'm in early, I'm out late, I'm doing all this work, I'm working harder than everybody else, yada, 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 yada. It's all about me, 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 me. When instead of positioning yourself as the hero, you need to position your audience as the hero in the story. And you are simply the guide.
Mm.
That's it.
Mhm.
So if you want to raise, you've got to pitch your boss as the hero, and you are your boss's guide to help them get what they want. So before you go in there talking about what you feel like you deserve, you got to find out what your boss wants. Then come up with a plan to help your boss get what he or she wants.
Mhm.
And then make sure that plan, of course, includes you getting a raise. But if you can position your audience as the hero in the story, man, you will be far more successful in the long run.
That is absolutely dope. Of the two biggest nuggets I picked up from that, and I never hear anybody say this. I never hear anybody say, do the work on yourself first, if necessary, before you go out and try to convince the world. And I kind of see that as my place. My place is helping great people discover themselves and the impact that they can have on the world, the impact that they can have on people by simply following their dreams and doing what they were born to do. So I think it's so cool that basically you said the first person you have to sell is you. Am I getting
Mm.
that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to become a person that you want to follow, you want to buy from, you want to deal with, and you will attract other people who feel the same way about you. Uh,
Absolutely.
that's pretty awesome. And the second part of that I grasped was positioning the customer or the client as a hero. That's pretty awesome because when we get overly focused on getting money, and money's important, we all need it. But I think when we get overly focused on money, we start to look at the client or the customer as like the source of like blood for me to leech on. Like I need,
Yeah.
you're the person I need to turn out their pockets.
Yes.
And that doesn't
Yes.
sound like the path to a healthy relationship at all. And people that people
Yeah.
sense that. That's pretty cool, man. So with Persuasion School, um, obviously your heart is to help people learn how to get more of what they want out of life. And I think that's necessary. A lot of people might look at that and look at it as a bonus or extra in life. I think going through life without getting anything that you wanted out of it is like analogous to hell. I think
Hmm.
there's a cost to not trying to get the things you want to out of life. People think that playing it safe is safe. I think playing it safe is dangerous. If it doesn't
Yeah.
include you getting anything that you want, it's dangerous to your soul. And I just want to know what do you think are the reasons people sometimes play it safe, that they don't step out and do exactly what it is that they want to do, that they're afraid to try, or it seems like they're afraid. What do you see there when people are teetering on that ledge?
Oh man. Well, I think I have an idea, and this is just my opinion. So
Yeah,
listening, take this with a
folks,
grain of
neither of
salt.
us are clinical psychologists, so
Right. Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. I want to make that clear before I start throwing these things around here. I could be so wrong,
Mhm.
but what I think is that um, when people put those walls up and they feel like it's better to play it safe than to go for some of the things that they want. I kind of interpret that as more of an identity issue. Maybe issue is not the right word, but more of an identity situation where you're telling yourself, I'm not the type of person that gets those things.
Mhm.
I'm not the type of person that gets a lucky break or that gets, whatever it is that you want. Right. And so, like, I remember one of my closest friends, he said this in passing. He probably doesn't even remember that he said it, but I'll never forget it. We were just chatting. We were roommates at the time, like 19 years old, I think. And I was doing my door-to-door thing still. Then this is like kind of in between school, whatever. And he was just asking me how I made all this money door to door. And he threw his head back and laughed. He was like, man, that's crazy. I'll always be the guy in the windows. I'd never be that guy on the other end selling them. I don't know how you do it. And it was like, man, you certainly never will if you're going to like box yourself in to that sort of identity. Man, I wish I knew like the psychological term for it or
Yeah,
whatever. But you know what I'm getting at here, right?
I
So it's like, yeah, I think that's an issue for for a lot of people is it's not even so much about doing, it's being. You just say like, I'm not the type of person to do X. And then you never end up going for it. You've got to switch that narrative in your head from I'm not the type of person to do it to something more realistic. Like I might not have the tools or ability to do that now, but I'm going to try at some point.
Yeah,
Like I'm willing to try at some point. You have to change that narrative in your head.
100%. And you got to be willing to think through it. I remember, so you probably don't know this about me. I am a former failed life insurance salesman. I
Okay,
took life
no.
insurance to save my life, took a big risk to do it, and ended up paying the price. Um, but I only bring that up to say I always saw myself as somebody who wasn't meant to have a job. So I'd quit the pretty good job I had to pursue that, failed miserably, and it wasn't even a good match. I don't even think it was for me. I didn't even really want it. I just liked some of the ideas around it. But that's another story.
Mm.
The point of that whole thing is that when I failed, I did not I did not say, I guess I have to go get a job somewhere for the rest of my life. Didn't give up on the dream, didn't give up on living life the way I always felt I was supposed to. I said to myself, I guess I can't work for myself that way. I
Mm.
guess I don't really even want to work for myself that way. That's not a good fit for me. But I know that I can find something that works for the person that I am.
Yes.
So it's okay for people. I'm not asking anybody to pretend that there's somebody that they're not. I'm just urging people to recognize that there is something for you to do in this world, and you being you is fine, and you can be successful as yourself. And stepping into this role in the podcast has been such a better fit for me, and who knows what it grows into. And I feel the same way about you, man. I talking to you, I get a pretty good sense of you, and I think that you're somebody who's going to have a meteoric rise. I'm glad that you were on tonight so people could learn a little bit about the art of persuasion. And I think the key nugget is, man, persuasion starts with persuading yourself or believing in yourself. And I think you provided us a lot of tools to begin on that journey. Jake, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Can you please share with people where they can find you on the internet or social media and anything you want them to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Najee, it's been awesome, and I love the show and what you're working on so far. And I'm excited for this to continue growing, just for more and more people to pursue the path to joblessness. Man, I think that that's so great. So I love it, and I appreciate that you reached out and asked me to pop on. So yeah, following the journey, for one, would encourage everybody here to listen to Persuasion School. I think that it's also pretty complementary to what you're working on here, right? So you come to Najee's podcast and become inspired to pursue that path to joblessness. And then you could jump over to Persuasion School at times, if you felt like it, to try to pick up some nuggets on how you can navigate conversations with individuals and start to make some of those things happen. So Persuasion School, you can find it anywhere on any podcast platform. And then Instagram, pretty active on there. A little too active, probably. It's Jake Savage. And then you can go to persuasionschoolpodcast.com too, if you want to learn more about kind of the background behind the show.
Awesome, man. Once again, thank you, folks. You should follow him. You should listen to Persuasion School. We're out here at war, fighting to break free from the matrix, from the 9 to 5 nightmare, and find the path to joblessness. Thank you, Jake. Have a great one.
Yes. Amen. Yeah, you too, brother.
All right. Just coming off a fresh interview with Jake Savage of Persuasion School, and it was a good one. Two major takeaways from that interview. First, if you're going to go out into the world and present yourself as someone who can help, someone who can assist, someone who can add value, doing something that's meaningful to you and will mean something to the people you're serving, the first person that you have to convince of your value is yourself. The first person that has to believe you is you, and nobody else is going to believe you if you don't. So it's worth the time and the effort. It's worth going through the process to get to a point where you're at peace with yourself and you believe in yourself. when you believe that you being you is something that's valuable to this world, well, you have enough faith in yourself and really enough faith in God to know that you were created for a purpose and that you yourself are useful. If you're not at that place, do the work. This podcast is designed to help you develop that mindset, to help you do that work, to hold your hand during that process. Point number 2, once you've all that done, what you've done all that work on yourself, you have to remember it's not really about you, right? It's about the people you're serving. And you have to make sure that comes across when you speak to them. They have to know that they are the hero of this story. And as Jake said, you are simply a guide bringing them along the path. You're simply giving them a helping hand. But they're the one making the decision that will change their lives forever. And your product, your service, or your presence or your special knowledge can assist them in that. 2 things, just by way of recap. The first person you have to persuade is yourself. And that's an ongoing task. Belief falters at times. But we know that we can be intentional about developing our mindsets and developing our confidence, just like any muscle. Second, it's not about you. You're not the hero saving the world. You're helping heroes discover the way forward. Thanks for listening. I'm Najee Simmons, and this is the No Job Podcast.